All right, so we are back here in the Reflections from A Course in Miracles, and we're talking about lesson 4. It's getting good, right? All right, lesson 4. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room, on the street, from this window, in this place. Unlike the preceding ones, these exercises do not begin with the idea for the day. In these practice periods, begin with noting the thoughts that are crossing your mind for about a minute. Then apply the idea to them. If you are already aware of unhappy thoughts, use them as subjects for the idea. Do not, however, select only the thoughts that you think are bad. You will find, if you train yourself to look at your thoughts, that they repeat such a mixture that, in a sense, none of them can be called good or bad. This is why they do not mean anything. In selecting the subjects for the application of today's idea, the usual specificity is required. Do not be afraid to use good thoughts as well as bad. None of them represents your real thoughts, which are being covered up by them. The good ones are but shadows of what lies beyond, and shadows make sight difficult. The bad ones are blocks to sight and make seeing impossible. You do not want either. This is a major exercise and will be repeated from time to time in somewhat different form. The aim here is to train you in the first steps towards the goal of separating the meaningless from the meaningful. It is a first attempt in the long-range purpose of learning to see the meaningless as outside you and the meaningful within. It is also the beginning of training your mind to recognize what is the same and what is different. In using your thoughts for application of the idea for today, identify each thought by the central figure or event it contains. For example, this thought about blank does not mean anything. It is like the things I see in this room, on the street, and so on. You can also use the idea for a particular thought that you recognize as harmful. This practice is useful, but not a substitute for the more random procedures to be followed for the exercises. Do not, however, examine your mind for more than a minute or so. You are too inexperienced as yet to avoid a tendency to become pointlessly preoccupied. Further, since these lessons are the first of their kind, you may find the suspension of judgment in connection with thoughts particularly difficult. Do not repeat these exercises more than 3 or 4 times during the day. We will return to them later. Wow, that was a mouthful. So this is an interesting lesson, and I want to just give a little story here because it reminds me of the first time that my yoga teacher said that your thoughts are make-believe. And the resistance that I had to that statement, that my thoughts were make-believe. I remember going right into, but I have a college education and I value my thoughts. I value my intelligence. I value my capacity to read and integrate information and to come up with valid points and to, hold my own in an argument. I valued so much of those things. And so when that statement came to me at 24, it was really altering. It felt very, it just felt really like, wow, like that's just the opposite of what I think now. And it's interesting that A Course in Miracles so early here in the lessons is going right into the thinking mind. And it's saying to you in lesson 4, just when we're starting to anytime you start your yoga practice, maybe the first class, it feels really good. And the second one, maybe not so much, third, fourth, fifth. And you're like, gosh, I think it's just harder than I thought it was going to be. yes, the benefits are great. I can see the benefits. Or it's like learning anything, a new skill like piano or going to the gym. It takes practice. And so early on, we give up the very thing that we committed to just a few days before. So I want to encourage you to continue on with the lessons, even though right now it's like there is very likely some resistance to, what do you mean my thoughts don't mean anything? That's insane. Of course they mean something. But let's flip this and let's go a little bit deeper and see if we can find something in here that feels like it resonates with us so that it can inspire us to continue to retrain our mindset into the thoughts of love and out of the thoughts of fear. These thoughts do not mean anything is saying, and then it goes into this explanation around how they're covering our real thoughts, the thoughts that we think are good, the thoughts that we think are bad. Now, in this work, in the yoga off the mat training, we do talk a lot about how thoughts happen first, then feelings, then behaviors. So when we see our behaviors, that's part of what inspires us to do this work in the Course in Miracles workbook or self-study, self-development, anything yoga in this kind of like in this metaphysical realm that's asking us to go a little bit deeper and outside the physical of what we think we know is happening because on some level we're not comfortable with how we're showing up in the world. We realize there is a better way. We're feeling a little bit like our behaviors are not necessarily reflecting who and what we believe that we can be in this world. And so if thoughts are happening before behaviors, then it makes sense to go into the thinking mind and start to get clear on the validity of such thoughts. So these thoughts do not mean anything is really powerful. It's a little bit easier to subscribe to that when we're having negative thoughts. Like a lot of people can be really judgmental of themselves, the way that they look or some of their habits. They might just really kind of beat themselves up. So in that case, you might be doing the lessons, scanning your thoughts, and you'll go, wow, there's a lot of judgment thoughts in here about myself. And then to respond to them with, these thoughts do not mean anything, again, puts you in observer mode rather than becoming the one that is feeling the effects of those thoughts. Thoughts happen, then feelings. Thoughts and feelings equal our behaviors. So this is so powerful. Now, what if it's a positive thought? You might be like, well, I like that thought. That thought gives me happy feelings, makes me feel good about myself, etc. Stay with me. Let's do it again. Wow, I'm really doing great. I'm really showing up to the work. Okay, that's the thought. If I respond, these thoughts do not mean anything to that, it's uncovering the deeper thoughts. The thoughts actually of worthiness, of acceptance, of allowing myself to just be as I am. So I know it's nuanced, but if you can a little bit see that beyond the thinking mind, there is a wisdom. There is a resonance that it's like the Course in Miracles calls it this ancient knowing, this ancient wisdom. And that's what we are looking to tap into. In the lesson, where it's encouraging us to do it a couple times a day, not to overdo it, and not to be specific around good and bad thoughts. Just to introduce this idea that we might have resistance to because we are so attached to our thinking mind and we value ourselves based on our productivity from the thinking mind. If we can just say, these thoughts don't mean anything. You might receive a text message and feel a constraint. You can say to yourself, these thoughts do not mean anything, and watch your feedback system, which is the body, start to unplug from that reactionary stage and bring you more into revelation, seeing. I see, revealing the truth of who you are, which is more than this thinking mind. Now, another idea I'd like to introduce here in this lesson so early on in our training together is this idea of separation, of feeling separate. Now, in the text of A Course in Miracles, which is kind of the intellectual framework of these ideas, and then we're in the workbook, which is the application and the practical aspect of practicing these ideas, it says that the separation occurred in time, but it didn't really occur in eternity. But in time, it occurred when the Son of God, which is you and me and everybody else, forgot to laugh at the idea that we could be separate from that which created us. So I work a lot with clients in terms of healing our relationship to the divine, because so many of us have really had a hard run at this, raised in religions that made you feel guilty, not good enough, made you feel like you were a bad person, that if you didn't do certain things the right way, you would get in trouble. We often have this idea of God with a long beard and a thunderbolt that's keeping track of when you're good and when you're bad, like a Santa Claus. Well, in the Course, it talks about how we have one problem. It seems like we have many problems, but we really just have one. And that one problem is our belief in our separation from the divine. And that is happening because of the thinking mind. We value so much these thoughts of being separate, of independence, of I'm doing good, I'm doing bad. But it is insane to believe that we could be separate from the divine or from the creator or from source or God or whatever you call it, does not matter, because it's the same idea as saying your mother who birthed you is not the mother who birthed you. Whether you like it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, there are certain facts that cannot be changed. You came into this reality through your mother. That's what happened, So it's the same with the divine. And that's why it's saying, it's like you forgot to laugh at how crazy it is to think that you're separate from that which created you. And so this is a returning back and an acceptance of the fact that you are created. The Course in Miracles talks about how we are ideas in the mind of God. We are extensions of light. We're rays of light from the sun, pretending that we're not, or resisting that we are, which is our right. We can do that as long as we want. But when we start to see those behaviors, the effect of those thoughts and feelings, at some point, and that's why you're here, you're saying there must be a different way, there must be a better way. And that is to allow ourselves to become more united with that energy which created us, which we would venture to say in this curriculum is love. And only love is real, and fear is the illusion here. And as you move through the rest of today and you sit with this lesson, start to let those ideas marinate within you. If I am not my thoughts, and I'm not my body, and I'm not my job, and I'm not my car, and I'm not these ideas that I have about myself, what am I? Who am I? The Course in Miracles says that our identification is everything. Who are we identifying as? Am I spirit in a body? Or am I just at the effect of this reality? Am I a victim of this world? And so it's a very empowering lesson today to start to challenge your thoughts. These thoughts do not mean anything. I look forward to hearing from you guys. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And I will see you for the next lesson, which is one of my favorites, tomorrow. Bye for now.